Nice boys there. Yeah. Yeah, they seem like this. You have to whip them up every now and then.
Oh, am I? Oh, okay. Sorry about that, folks. So let's open in a word of prayer, and I will catch up with where everybody else is. Lord, thank you so much for this day, Lord. Pray you'll bless our time together. Pray you'll help us to have an insight into the things that are going on in the world, and to also approach that not with a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, and that we will also be able to speak the truth in love to all those around us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, look, I'm going to ask you to pray while we're doing this, because of the nature of the things I talk about. There's a lot of people that kind of swing by our YouTube channel and chat. So pray for these people that they'll hear truth and that they'll understand it. I did a talk a number of years ago on part of Israel, and I think I became a class project at Al-Quds University. I mean, I had hundreds of followers, many of whom all of a sudden on Facebook, many of whom were supporters and I believe members of the organization that's been causing havoc in the Middle East here recently. So pray that they'll come and get the truth and that we'll be able to deal with that. So let me just give you a little bit of an update. I think, I know I always say this, think this one will be a little bit shorter than usual. I know that means an hour and 44 and a half minutes instead of an hour and 45 minutes. But I've been pretty busy. I've probably done, 15, 20 hours of interviews over the last 2 weeks. I have to prepare for that. You can find those. I know that, for example, I did Minute to Midnight with Tony that was up this week. I did Serpents and Doves with Pablo that he posted on Thursday. And these will be on Rumble or YouTube. And I'm sure our great moderators and people who help us will be posting the links to all of these as I'm speaking. I also did a couple interviews. I don't know if they're on the internet with a Christian radio station in Homer, Alaska, of all places. I did an hour last Monday, and then another hour will play tomorrow on a show called Miracle Monday with Deb Butter. She does daily shows there. It's something KCHX or something like that. Homer, Alaska. Oh, I did. So I've been doing a lot of these. And tonight, I'm going to do Hope for Our Times. That will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Hope for Our Times app, Hope for Our Times YouTube channel, and also on their website and wherever else they post. And I think they might stream live on Facebook as well under Tom Hughes' Facebook page. So what I don't get to today, I will get to tonight. And again, I'm going to apologize in advance for if I'm repetitive in any circumstance. I'm going to touch on a few things, but I'll go into more depth tonight on a couple of them. It's hard for me to keep track of who I've talked to and what I've talked about. And it's always funny because, somebody will send me a note or sometimes say something like, well, you really need to talk about this. Well, I talked about that last week for about 10 minutes in the middle of that mess that I put up. Oh, I must have missed it, or that's okay if you don't listen. I'm not trying to out you. But then the other truth is sometimes they say, and I said, that kind of sounds familiar. And I have to go back and look because I don't even remember what I talked about. So if you don't, there's a little bit of grace that we exercise in that particular situation. So today we're going to talk about agents of chaos, have a little bit on some cultural AI things, just a little bit. Then we're going to talk mostly about the Middle East and the chaos that's just really being visited on the world by a lot of people. And I'll talk about some of the rise of a little bit of anti-Semitism and that type of thing. I do have a long video to explain at least one side of what happened on October 7th. It's not the whole story, folks. We know that there's a lot more to know, but we'll talk about that. And I also did the sermon first hour today, and we talked a little bit about the rise of anti-Semitism. So we talk about this each week. Acceleration, things are going to happen very, very quickly. Convergence are all going to be happening at once. And do we see that? We see all these things with the culture, global governance, the UN. By the way, I'm not even going to get to COP20. I may do it tonight, a little bit about COP28. And there have also been some very important meetings taking place. Of course, we had the UN meetings almost 2 months ago now. It seems like they just happened yesterday. A lot happened. And it does it seem like to you that time gets compressed? I mean, it's that way naturally when you're older. Pam and I are always talking about, oh, well, that movie, when did that movie came out? 40 years ago. What are you talking about? It seemed like it was just yesterday. And then you look at the actor, and then you go get an image of the actors and actresses in the movie from 40 years ago and look at them, and you're like, yeah, it has been 40 years. And if they're still alive. So everything's happening all at once. And then there's the logistics aspect that, and I will talk a little bit about some logistics things, refutation of arguments. I see people making their arguments are so bad, they're unhinged. I don't know how else to say it. They've completely lost their ability to reason. And then understanding, and that comes out of Daniel chapter 12, and I heard, but I understood not, then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And then also this verse, which I think is more appropriate than ever, and woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. There's so many examples of this being played out in the world around us today are legion. One of the things, I don't even have some of the videos, they're all over Twitter. People have put up pictures of the hostages in Gaza. There are now 236. I think 4 have been found dead. 3 or 4 have been found. Maybe it was 239. Now they're down to 236 because they found a young soldier. She was 19. They found an older lady, and then they also found an 86-year-old man that had expired. They found them in that hospital that they've been going over that's they believe, and I think there's good evidence that this sits on top of the Hamas headquarters there in the north part of Gaza. So people put up these posters all over the place about, free the hostages and the pictures of the hostages. And then these people go around and rip them down or deface them. I saw one where they painted little Hitler mustaches on all the hostages. And it just shows, the world is so upside down. How is it harming anybody that these hostages are there? And these people that are doing it will sometimes actually defend themselves like, well, we're doing a good thing because it's propaganda that the hostage posters are up there. Not that it's propaganda that they actually have hostages. A young girl had her 9th birthday yesterday in captivity. A mother, we assume she's still alive. She was 8 months pregnant when she was taken on October 7th and very likely has given birth. There are children there. There's a young boy that's now over 10 months old. He spent over 10% of his life under Hamas captivity. When the Israelis the IDF went through the hospital there in North Gaza, in Gaza City, they found Pampers, boxes of Pampers. And of course, all the pro-Hamas people immediately twisted that to say, oh, well, see, it's just a nursery. It's a daycare center. It's not anything. There's nothing. They haven't found anything there. And they're not going to, by the way, it's a war. They're not going to release all the information about everything that they find because that would tip off the enemy And the enemy is smart, and you'll see, I think, a video about that. But we live in a very disrupted world. So it's that time of year again when The Economist, one of the world-leading financial magazines, I do subscribe to it, they've come out with their World Ahead 2024. They do this. Remember a few years ago, they had the backwards thing that you had to look in a mirror or reverse the image to see what it is. And that's kind of has a cult symbolism to it. And in the thing, there was something about King Charles, then Prince Charles. There was also the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that type of thing. So it's very interesting what they do. So it's predictive. Some people say, well, it's so predictive that they're controlling everything in the world. And I don't know that that's true, but they have these symbolism. But look at the one on the right, the World Ahead 2024, our 90-page guide to the coming year. And what this is the article that is in The Economist this week is, this is the most dangerous threat to the world. This man in silhouette and his followers are the most dangerous threat to the world. Now, think about how, frankly, moronic that is. It just goes to show you that what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24 applies. You will be hated by all men. Now, look, I'm not equating that man with Jesus, but it applies to his followers, which may be in many cases Christians or people who voted for him in the past. I don't know if I'll vote for him this time, but it's everybody's conscience. But Jesus said you'll be hated by all men for what? For my name's sake. So if you're living for Jesus and you make it clear that you're a follower of Jesus, people are not going to like that. And I've experienced this in my own life. As nice and humble and unassuming and quiet that I am, I've received some what do they say, people throwing some shade at me because I'm a Christian. But look at the other one here. This is a little bit closer in view. And so you can kind of see some of the symbols. So up here we have Zelensky and Putin. We have bombs. We have like peace stuff. And then we have the hourglass showing that the time is running out. We also have rockets like missiles, solar panels, rockets to the stars. Then they also have this thing, because in 2024, there's going to be at least one major eclipse. So they have that, see how they have that in the middle? The cycle of the sun going into an eclipse and then coming back out. And that eclipse is actually, by the way, it's going to be in the United States. And it's going to actually, I think the last one we had went from northwest to southeast. This one's going to go from southwest to northeast. And they make an X right around the Mississippi River near Cairo, Illinois, where they had the biggest earthquake probably in American history. And that's going to happen sometime in 2024. And the path of totality is going to go through northwest Ohio up towards Cleveland, I believe. But it's going to make an X, and so everybody's attaching significance to that. And they attach significance to, I'm just telling you this, I will profess to be agnostic on the subject, but I do think there's going to be signs in the heavens, so I just don't know that these are in Scripture. But they just had that eclipse that went across the United States. It actually, kind of interesting factoid, is it exited the United States at high noon at a place called Corpus Christi, Texas. And some people are attaching, prophetic significance to that. And time will tell. We're still here, and that happened a few weeks ago. And then you have here, look at some of the other things. You have what appears to be on the right, in the middle, the stock market, and it seems to be going down. I'm not sure what that is all the way on the right with the building blocks, but here on the left, you have the brain connected to the computers. That's coming. I mean, some of this is pretty low-hanging fruit for being predictive. Then they have ballot box in the middle because there are a lot of elections worldwide. Been a big election in Spain and Argentina. Then you go down here on the lower left, you have Biden on one side, you have Xi on the other, you have electric car on the right, you have apparently global warming, the temperature, then you have the hurricane, you have wind farms. I guess, do the wind farms do better in hurricanes? I guess we should, I mean, if we have all wind farms everywhere, maybe we should pray for hurricanes so those things can really spin. I'm sure that will work. And then I'm not sure what this one is in the, not the bottom, the two here on the bottom. I can't see that well. I'm not sure what those are. I think some of those are crystals or diamonds on the right, and electricity and that type of thing. And you know that they're having trouble with the electric vehicles. Sales are down. People are kind of, if I take it on a trip, I can't charge. Somebody went in, I think it was in the Silicon Valley area. They went to a bunch of charging stations. 40% of them did not work. That's good. That's really good. I love that picture of somebody carrying in a Tesla with a Tesla diesel-powered generator on a trailer so they can charge themselves up and get unlimited things. And there was one picture of a charging station way out in the middle of nowhere, Canada. And the charging station was there, but they kind of went back behind the trees and they found that the charging station was powered by diesel generators. So, yeah, I saw this car in Colorado once. I actually took a picture of it. The license plate was a Tesla, went by me up near north of Colorado, near Loveland, and it said, "I emit zero." And I thought, you're apparently smart enough to get a good paying job to buy that overpriced thing, but you're not smart enough to think it through. You haven't thought it through. So a little bit about this. So this is something that's coming. This is a RAND report. RAND does these scientific reports, and this is a recent one. It just came out, Machine Learning and Gene Editing, excuse me, at the helm of a scientific or societal evolution. And through there, they have all of these pictures of what they're proposing to do with editing DNA and genes. And this is where they think they're going to go with AI. That's why when 60 Minutes did that thing a couple months ago, where they talked about what AI has been done in terms of analyzing the three-dimensional structure of biological proteins, of which there are about 200 million. The AI guy said, and he works with one of the big AI, I don't know if he works with Google or one of the big AI companies. He said it used to take a PhD research scientist 5 years of full-time work, many hours a day, to do one three-dimensional structure of a protein. They were able to figure out the system, program it into these AI computers, and they were literally able to do all 200 million proteins in a matter of days. And there's a good side and a bad side to that. There's a good side. They might be able to do something to help people. And the bad side may be in trying to do something good to help people, and they may do something very, very bad. Because this is messing with the building blocks of life. This is sort of a biological Tower of Babel. The good thing, at least I pray that this pattern holds, is that when the original Tower of Babel, and you can read about it in Genesis chapter 11, was under construction, God intervened. So they didn't get finished with their plan. I pray that God intervenes before they're done in this situation. I was doing some research this week on NEOM, and NEOM is one of the candidates that I look at for this final Babylon that we know is coming. In many respects, it fits. I did find a quote from an architect in a video this week. I'll try to pull the clip out and play it maybe tonight. Peter Cook. And he said, if this thing's work, this is a new Babylon. Now, I doubt that he knows Bible prophecy or anything like that. And I just find it interesting when secular people kind of swerve into what we talk about and look at and use as a basis for analyzing the things that are going on in the world. So you can get that RAND report, you can download it. I'll be talking more about it in the future. There's many things going on. There's COP28, the global climate thing coming up in Dubai. There's also a summit next year, September 22nd and 23rd, the UN, the Summit for the Future. And when you look at that, all these people, I think I played part of a clip last week of AI for Good, where the lady was talking about it was an AI for Good summit that took place this past summer. She was looking at it and she said, and when they did that, all of the stuff incorporates the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And so this Summit of the Future is kind of a conglomeration of all of this World Economic Forum, SDGs, AI, all of this stuff, the Summit for the Future, and we're going to make everything perfect for humanity. That usually doesn't work. I'm not sure if this is good news or bad news. Sam Altman, who was one of the founders of OpenAI with Elon Musk, Musk left a number of years ago because he thought Sam Altman was getting too commercial. The board fired Sam Altman this week, which is kind of this is a big deal in the AI space. Now, they've said that he wasn't being candid with us. Now, I don't know what that means. Is he lying about the business numbers, the business model, where he's going with this, what he wants to do with this as he leads the company? I don't know. But it says there's a philosophical rift among the people building new AI systems. And Altman said I've played clips of him, you've seen those clips. But now there's also this report that came out just after they released this one. This is from the New York Times a couple hours ago. Sam Altman is said to be in talks with OpenAI board members about returning to the company. I don't know. Well, now I'm going to talk about Middle East, mostly Gaza, Hamas, and I'm just going to kind of mix in all the different things that I've got going. And again, tonight, 7 p.m., I'll do a little bit more on this and tie up some what I think are loose ends from today, of which there probably will be enough loose threads to make, a coat for me, which is a lot of loose threads. So this is an interesting graphic. I see this appear a lot, and it sort of shows the philosophical difference between Israel and Hamas. On the right, you see the Israeli soldier and the people protected in the bunker. On the other side, you see the women and children and Hamas protected in the bunker. I think this is highly accurate. I don't like to listen. People are dying in Gaza. I don't know how many. The numbers are coming from Hamas, which is known to lie about everything. So I don't know how accurate the numbers are, but I assume there's been a lot of death in Gaza. It's a war. However, people keep throwing around the word genocide way too much. The Palestinian population has increased many times over the last 50, 60, 75 years that live within what people call between the river and the sea. I will talk about that tonight also. There's actually some verses about the river and another boundary that's coming. It's in the book of Zechariah. See if you can finish it or find it. But this is war. And these are just some images that people put up. This was put up by Yemen the other day, and you see the ship is a container ship with the name Israel on it. Here's another graphic that they put up. We will burn your ships. They post this. And you see the Israeli flag there, everything's on fire. Now, there's a report that just came out as I was getting ready to preach first hour about this ship that Yemen claims to have seized in the ocean. I believe that the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, has come out and said that's not an Israeli ship. Now, Yemen may have thought it was an Israeli ship, and that's why they seized it. But it's an ocean-going container ship. So just that's sort of breaking news. But it's just interesting that I had this in my presentation to talk about these images that Yemen has put up about we will sink your ships. And now today, Yemen seizes a ship in the Red Sea. I think it's sort of like, well, when they tell you that they're going to do something, you probably should believe them. And this is just a thing to show you the way the language is used in these news reports. Here it says, video shows what a Hamas fighter did as attacks on Israel began. Because he's a fighter. Okay, that's what CNN thinks. He's not a terrorist, he's a fighter. I don't remember if I told you about this report last week where the report said that many Israelis have died since October 7th. And Gazans have been killed. It's a clear choice of the language. This is something, America's opioid epidemic, it's horrible. We've had 100,000 people a year dying. Look at what I think this article says. In the 1990s, death rose sharply by 2,000. Nearly 20,000 people were dying from overdoses annually. In 2021, the number topped 100,000 in a year for the first time, an increase of more than 500% over a decade. To put this in context, at the height of the HIV epidemic, fewer than 50,000 Americans were dying from the disease. How many died in Vietnam? 55 to 60,000, I think, over a decade, 12, 13 years. Over the past 25 years, the U.S. has lost more than 1 million lives to drug overdoses, more than to both world wars combined. That's a stunning thing. Now, you're going to see a lot of propaganda and that sort of thing. So, for example, here is if you go to Khamenei's website, what they do is they take biblical imagery and they transfer it to the Palestinians. So here you see Iran, Khamenei is parting the sea so that the Palestinians can return to the Dome of the Rock, which is not a mosque, by the way. It's 8-sided. It's a commemorative building. But what have they erected with it? And you can see Jerusalem in the background. They've put minarets up. And by the way, for the most part, Palestinian Arabs are not restricted from going up on the Temple Mount. There are times when, for lack of a better term, they're misbehaving and they're not allowed to go. But they've claimed that Jews going up there and walking around, or Christians going up there and walking around, were storming Al-Aqsa. And this Al-Aqsa image is what is embedded in their minds. So, for example, when Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem in 2017, immediately there's an Organization of Islamic Countries meeting in Istanbul chaired by President Erdogan of Turkey, and he put up this map about this is what our response ought to be to the embassy moving. It's not accurate, but it's his version of Ezekiel 38:39. So don't believe what the Bible prophecy teachers think. Think what one of the speakers is talking about that. let me see here. I need to, hang on a second, I need to exit out of here and move the slide. And so this is about, as I said, my slides are a bit of a mixed order. I preach first hour, and that's sort of, I don't think I had anything out of order at the first hour. But here, did I? Okay. See, you don't remember either, do you? How it all blew up for AI is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was the father of the atomic bomb. Sam Altman's one of the founders of this AI stuff. And one thing that you did not hear from the AI board, from OpenAI, was, we're going to slow this down, we're going to stop, we're going to be safe, we're going to lead the way on government regulations on this thing. This thing is going forward at an epic pace. There's been a lot of propaganda, misinformation flying around, particularly around this hospital that Israel's been dealing with recently. This is from the Times of London. And Lawrence Friedman is exactly right in his article that it's become a lightning rod in a war of misinformation. I mean, you hear it. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I've seen a lot of misinformation in my day. It's bad. The other thing that you're going to see is, so there's a lot of theories about what happened in Gaza. So one theory is Netanyahu planned it so that he would save himself politically, or that he would give himself cover for going in and getting rid of the Palestinians, and he would do it when he would have world opinion behind him. Now, let me ask you this. Is world opinion behind Israel right now? It is among some of their supporters, but I'm telling you folks, I said this a few weeks ago, this is going to be the most divisive issue in the evangelical church that we've ever seen in our life. I think all other issues are going to pale by comparison. And this article from yesterday's London Times of London, Israel's losing friends and understanding. My generation grew up supporting a brave nation recoiling from the Holocaust, but I see that sympathy under threat. I think it's largely gone. People are not going to tolerate it. By the way, I see all these people complaining about Israel. Nobody ever mentions what happened on October 7th. Nobody mentions the hostages. Just post something on your Facebook page like "Free the Hostages" and see what happens. See what kind of or your Twitter account, see what kind of vitriol you get from people. It's unlike anything that I've ever seen. Now, this is good news. This is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Now, I don't know, like, immediately everybody's going to say, well, is she really, really, truly a Christian? I think she's been one of the best thinkers of my lifetime. She's married to Niall Ferguson. She was raised Muslim, and she now says that she's a Christian. So I think she lives in the UK. She's been under a death threat. Everything is mixed up in the world. Here, this is desire to drive smalls among young. High cost, delayed tests, and changing attitudes have pushed up the average age of learners to 27. Now, we have a young lady in our congregation who's 15 and a half, and she's starting to drive. And I don't see her mother here right now, but I'm sure her mother would say, yeah, I think she should wait till she's 27. That would be a good idea. And I'm sure if I talked to her, she would say, no way, man. I already got my permit. But it just shows you that the world is very different. Now, this is from the UK, but that's one of the problems that we're seeing a lot is, for lack of a better term, girly men. Men don't act like men a lot of times anymore. And if you do act like a man, they're like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're acting like a man. Well, I are one. Another article from the UK, Afghan warlords are fueling Europe's migration crisis. There are migration crises in the West all over the place. It's happening again in Europe. It's happening in the UK. It's happening on our southern border. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it, except there seems to be some very high-powered people funding it. This has been going on for a long time, though. This was part of the design, I think, of Syria, was to rid Syria of Sunni Muslims and get them on the road. As the head of the NATO command said, get them on the road and make them somebody else's problem. And so here, this young lady on the right, she's the 19-year-old IDF soldier who was found dead in Hamas at the hospital that Israel's been going on. This was another thing that happened. If you've been to Israel, there's Highway 60. It's the Avenue of the Patriarchs. By the way, I don't know if that Route 60 movie has been released yet for purchase. It was done by TBN, and I always know that you always have to do the disclaimer if it's done by TBN. But I went to see it. I thought it was pretty good. It's about Highway 60, which is the Highway of the Patriarchs, and it talks about the history of Israel that exists along Highway 60, Shiloh, Hebron, Beersheba. Well, north of Hebron is a Jewish community where a lot of people I know live, called Gush Etzion and Efrat. If you think of Bethlehem, Ephrata, that's in the region of that. It's between Hebron and Bethlehem. And on Highway 60, there's a checkpoint. I've been through this checkpoint a number of times. And yesterday, a little white car, two-door with a hatchback, drove up with 3 Hamas guys in it, and they jumped out at the checkpoint and started shooting. They injured 4 Israeli soldiers at the checkpoint and killed 1. So these checkpoints are not, we go through them and it's sort of like, oh, what are they doing? This is why they're doing it. They all jumped out, and when they unpacked the car, they found loaded magazines, I think some RPGs, grenades, and their goal was to get through the checkpoint and go up to Jerusalem and cause some havoc. One of them was the son of one of the founders of Hamas that had been killed back in 2006 or 2007 by the IDF. And they, as they say in the Israeli press, they neutralized all 3 of the terrorists, but unfortunately one of the IDF soldiers was killed. And these are young, these are kids. These are 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that are manning these checkpoints. But this is what happened. So this was in the checkpoint on Highway 60 between, near Bethlehem and on the way up to Jerusalem. This is the way things are in Israel. And Israel's in major disruption. 200,000 people don't live where they lived. Think of the economic disruption. 200,000, I think 120,000 from the north, 80,000 from the south. Some of them are staying over at a lot. They're staying over at hotels on the Dead Sea. But when are they going to get to go back? Is it a year, 3 months, 6 months, 3 years? In some cases, people have been told. That's a problem. So there's a lot of theories right now going around. So I'm going to show you what I thought the Washington Post did. This is about a 12-minute video that I want you to watch. And it's about the technological aspect of the Hamas attack on the border on October 7th. I know some of my friends may disagree with me. I thought the attack was masterfully planned. I think they had duped people in Israel, but there's a lot of people in Israel who think that there are people in the higher-ups in the government, IDF, whatever, that caused it to happen so they could do something else. I can't completely dissuade anybody of that particular notion. But I think one of the important things that people need to focus on is what Hamas was able to do and how they did it. And so the Washington Post, I think, did a pretty good job. This appeared on Friday. I think you probably have to have a subscription, so I've brought the thing over. So go to the Washington Post and subscribe for a month if you want to watch it in more detail. Here's the video on what happened on October 7th.
القليل من السيطرة على منظومة رصد ومراقبة تحديدا مقابل ناحية السنة.
On the morning of October 7th, more than 1,000 fighters from Hamas broke through the 20-foot-high barrier that has long separated Israel from Gaza's civilians and the militants of Hamas. A $1 billion upgrade in 2021 outfitted the barrier with what Israel said were cutting-edge surveillance tools, a deep underground concrete layer to block Hamas tunnels, and remote control machine guns above ground. Israeli officials hailed the new wall.
ומציבים קיר ברזל, בטון וסנסורים בינו לבין תושבי הדרום.
The surprise attack on October 7th was the deadliest single assault in Israel's history. Israel's government has pledged to investigate the catastrophe, which many security analysts have rated the nation's worst intelligence failure.
We didn't believe that Hamas had this capability, and so we didn't see it coming.
So how and why did Israel's vaunted defenses fail, allowing Hamas to pull off its shocking assault? To answer that question, the Washington Post analyzed hundreds of videos and photos posted on social media, including visuals of the attack and the preparations that preceded it. We examined maps and planning documents recovered from slain Hamas fighters, reviewed videos and audio recorded by militants' body cams and Israeli security cameras, and spoke to witnesses. Our reconstruction shows how Hamas fighters quickly neutralized key parts of the so-called Iron Wall, exploiting vulnerabilities created by Israel's dependence on technology and remotely monitored surveillance equipment. Videos of militants training to attack mock-ups of Israeli compounds had been posted to social media months earlier and were visible to all. We took the visual evidence from October 7th and mapped it across southern Israel and inside the Gaza Strip. We used the position of the sun to estimate when key events occurred. We located footage from 14 breaches determining where they occurred, from the Erez crossing in the north to Kerem Shalom in the south. Israel says there were around 30 breaches in all. Dawn, around 6:15 a.m., fighters set off from Gaza. People along the road cheer them on.
Innocent civilians. They knew what they were doing.
As fighters make their way to the fence, Hamas begins firing a barrage of rockets at targets across the barrier around 6:30 a.m. Israeli officials say more than 3,000 rockets were fired in total and were likely intended to distract their troops. Israelis are observing a week-long religious holiday. The country's military has recently been shifting troops to the West Bank amid growing unrest. Text messages between residents of one kibbutz show their assumption that the rockets are a routine irritant rather than anything more serious. In one video, Hamas reconnaissance fighters paraglide over the barrier under the cover of the rockets. Training videos posted to social media after the attack show that militants had been practicing that and other tactics they used to breach the fence. They had also been expanding their training camps, activity that was visible in widely available online maps. The evidence of militants being trained and armed was largely ignored or dismissed, experts said. After the initial rocket barrage, Hamas soon transitions to the next stage of the operation. Sever the connections that link Israel's surveillance and security system. Inside the group, it is known as the blinding plan. Israel's visibility of the fence was already partially reduced, because 3 of the 7 surveillance balloons used to monitor hotspots along the Gaza fence were not in operation. These SkyStar balloons carry a long-range 360-degree camera. The cameras on the 3 balloons needed maintenance, but the model that Israel uses is relatively old and is no longer made. On the morning of October 7th, militants cut one of the balloons loose, causing it to float away. Along with the balloon, Hamas videos capture attacks on at least 7 critical surveillance and weapons towers along the fence. How did Hamas know where to hit? Analysts said Hamas may have spent years collecting intelligence about Israel's defenses. The militants used drones to gather data and elicited information from Gazan day laborers who had permits to enter Israel for work, Israeli intelligence officials said.
Hamas really committed a very serious intelligence work. It was not a general blind defensive. They knew exactly what are the points they want to attack.
Hamas planning documents indicate that leaders had deep knowledge of the models of equipment used by Israel that they would need to overcome. Fighters also carried with them open-source satellite imagery annotated with coded locations of key structures along the wall. One type of system noted in these maps and attacked on October 7th are surveillance towers. In this video from the day, an unmanned drone drops an explosive on one near Kibbutz Be'eri. Training videos recorded before the attack show fighters had practiced dropping explosives from inexpensive Hexcopter drone models and launching fixed-wing Zuari suicide drones. Some of these towers house speed surveillance systems, which contain HD cameras, laser and infrared sensors, and radars, and can see people almost 6 miles away, according to the manufacturer. Each unit costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. In this document, Hamas specifically notes the locations of such speed surveillance systems. Visuals and other data from the towers are sent through hardwired cables to military outposts along the fence, notably facilities at Re'im, Nachal Oz, and Urim. They are monitored 24 hours a day by Israeli personnel, according to security analysts. The former head of one of the firms that built the fence told the Post that without the towers and their sensors, Israeli visibility would be severely limited.
The command center are disconnected from the sensors, and they are not able to give real-time indication what's going on in the border in real time. When you are taking down the main communication towers, of course, some of them or all of them have backups. To my understanding, most of the backups were taken as well.
In addition to taking out surveillance towers, Hamas launches attacks on multiple Sentry Tech towers topped with Samson weapons stations, which feature machine guns and sensors. The towers are positioned every few hundred yards along the barrier and outside key military facilities, according to analysts and past reports. They are nicknamed Ro'eh Yoreh, Hebrew for sees, fires. Once the sensors send intruder alerts, IDF personnel can fire the 50 caliber machine guns at targets by remote control. Israeli forces have used the towers to kill people it said were Hamas terrorists in past incidents. But on October 7th, Hamas dropped incendiary explosives from drones, fired rocket-propelled grenades, and unleashed sniper fire at the towers, videos show. The full extent of the damage done to the weapons and electronic connections is not clear from the footage. Several of the towers are marked on maps recovered from Hamas fighters and first published by NBC News. The Post verified videos of at least 2 of the towers in these maps being attacked. This tower, located beside a reservoir at the fence near Kfar Aza, was attacked twice by Hamas drones. Improvised incendiary explosive devices with fuses were dropped on its camera and beneath its weapon system. Video released by Israel shows that in at least one instance, observation soldiers were able to use a weapons tower to disrupt a dozen or so Hamas fighters approaching the fence near Kisufim. Some Israeli tanks and armored vehicles were in positions to engage Hamas fighters, but videos show Hamas striking first with drones and rockets to take out these threats to its advance. The drone maneuver used on October 7th was well practiced, according to this training video filmed before the attack. Fighters carried documents containing 3-digit codes to use when discussing Israeli vehicles, and details of expected vehicle response times. Recovered documents outlined what the group said were different spots on the Israeli Merkava tank that, if hit, would destroy the tank, and other spots that would disable it. Several fighters carry anti-tank rocket-propelled grenades, which, according to this document, can be used to penetrate the armor of the Israeli tanks. As the sun begins to rise, trained fighters use a range of explosives and munitions to blow holes in the fence and concrete barriers in multiple locations. It takes them only minutes. In Be'eri, fighters are seen propping up an anti-tank mine beside the fence, while they fix other explosives to the wire. Another team appears to detonate explosives through a so-called strip and frame charge, closely resembling a device seen in a Hamas training video filmed earlier.
This is the breaching device.
Following the attack, Israel said it had also recovered blocks of plastic explosives from Hamas casualties. By sunrise, around 6:40 a.m., in all 14 breach locations captured on video reviewed by The Post, Israel's defenses appear to have crumbled. Fighters stream through, some in vehicles, others on foot. Most do not come under fire. There is no sign of Israeli personnel. In these locations, defense has failed. The first waves of what the Israeli government estimates will be 3,000 militants quickly pass through. The stage is set for a massacre. More than 1,200 Israelis were killed on October 7th, according to Israeli authorities, as militants overran military sites and kibbutzes and rampaged through a music festival. Around 240 were taken captive and brought back into Gaza, Israel said. Within hours, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel was at war. The Israeli retaliation has been catastrophic for Palestinian civilians. A bombing campaign and ground invasion of Gaza has so far killed more than 11,000 Palestinians, including more than 4,500 children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The death toll rises daily. The failure laid bare by the Hamas attack has set off furious recriminations inside Israel. Stunned Israelis are now demanding Netanyahu's resignation and accountability for their security establishment's failure.
So they also have but the side that, of course, this is Washington Post, so they're not going to give you the whole, only what fits their narrative. They're going to give you, they're not telling you that, it's really united a large portions of the Israeli public. Like, we can't let this happen. But people are upset. And again, I've said this, I do not think that Benjamin Netanyahu political career will survive this. So I have some things about the development of this dispute. I will discuss those tonight. This is just some different stories. Jordan's foreign minister says, well, Israel, they doubt they can destroy Hamas because Hamas is an idea. And then there's some truth to that. There's also some truth to that there might be respect gained in that part of the world if Israel shows itself to be the strong horse. Some of the estimates that I saw were in the thousands of Israeli soldiers would be killed in the Gaza incursion, if and when it occurred. In the area of northern Gaza, they estimated 500 to 1,000 Israeli defense forces dead. That number is about 50. They expected 500 or more at this point, so they're about 1/10. So they're doing well. They're going at it very methodically. This is not going to be done quickly. There's 300 miles of tunnels. There are large numbers of them booby-trapped. Doors are booby-trapped. Hidden doors are booby-trapped. I believe there was a group of 5 Israeli soldiers who were killed the other day when a booby-trapped door went off, exploded. And when you get into those tunnels, it's man-to-man fighting. It's not 10 guys coming. It's one guy getting through that tunnel. I've seen mock-ups of these tunnels, and it's not that big. So it's going to be a problem. So at the same time that this is going on, I don't have any pictures of it, so we have the Chinese president comes to meet with the person who occupies the office of president in the United States in San Francisco. And what did they do? They cleaned up San Francisco, which kind of leads you to believe they could have done it all along. But for the Chinese Communist Party head and dictator who runs China, And he is a dictator. Stop this. Well, if you call him a dictator, you're going to set back our... He's a dictator. He runs everything. Can we just speak the truth about some of these things? And when he comes, the streets of San Francisco are lined with Chinese flags. If you line them with American or Israeli flags, people will say, well, Israeli flags, people say, oh, look, they're giving allegiance to a foreign government. But China's okay. So Xi comes, he goes to a business leaders meeting, 400 of them, they give him a standing ovation. This is not a nice man. The Stockholm Institute for Peace Research, they had a yearbook and they asked this question, this was earlier this year, are we headed towards World War III? Now, there are a lot of theories about why this happened. This is a good article in the Financial Times about what's going to happen. It seems like China, Russia, and Iran are kind of joined together here, particularly Russia and Iran. And that sort of brings to mind Ezekiel 38 and 39, which talks about this Northern Alliance. And then you add Turkey. I mean, remember the video I played of Erdogan at a speech the day after the attack saying it's not just Israel. You need to get that out of your minds. That the cross will soon fall to the Islamic crescent. That's what Erdogan says. And Erdogan's being very belligerent. Now, he has a bad economy, but the people in Turkey are following right along. This is what they want. So the other thing that's difficult is when they talk about innocent civilians, over half the people that came across the border, I've heard the number as high as 4,500, were civilians, many of whom had worked in these homes, in these kibbutzes, gave information as to where people's safe rooms are to the Hamas fighters. So where do you draw the line on who's innocent and not innocent? But it's not a genocide, folks. There are 2.2 million people that lived in the Gaza Strip. And so let's take Hamas numbers as accurate. That's 11,000 that have been killed. That's not a genocide. It's just not. The numbers don't add up. What happened in Europe in World War II, that was a genocide. But you see how everybody flips everything upside down, just like Isaiah 5 chapter said. So the question asked in the week, is the world heading to World War III? Now, I talked a little bit about this last week. There have been two theories that I've seen posited recently about why. So let's say the assumption is Israel planned this and did it, and why did they do that? And that's always the question, is they planned that. So there's a few theories. I'll discuss two of them right now. I mentioned this one last week, the Ben Gurion Canal. So when Netanyahu drew this new Middle East thing with a red pen at the UN on September 22nd, people are now taking that and see, he's putting a canal through there, through Gaza. And that's not what he was doing. By the way, it goes north, the red line goes north of Gaza anyway. That's where the Ben Gurion Canal was supposed to go. And I talked about this last week, that I think this is a great graphic. It kind of shows the central highlands of Israel and then the Gaza Strip. And the canal was to go to the ports there north of Gaza. And it would come from a lot way down here at the bottom, would go up, and it would come through the valley and go up, make a couple curves and go over there. That was the plan. Everybody says, well, see, Israel's doing this. And I'm telling you, some people are completely unhinged about this. One guy is Mike Adams, the health ranger. The vitriol and hatred he has for Israel is unbelievable. There's another guy I follow. I think he's been great on our border security, Michael Yon. Maybe tonight I'll share his tweet about what he says. That's not Israel. There's no Israel. There's no Jews in Israel. That's a conspiracy theory. That's been debunked many times. And by the way, if you're on my Facebook and you're a friend and following me and you don't like what I'm saying, then here's an invitation for you to unfriend me right now. Because I've studied all of these theories. I know what they are. I've read them. You are not going to persuade me. I'm sorry. You can try, but you're wasting your time. Go get somebody else who doesn't think and doesn't analyze and doesn't research it. There are DNA studies and everything that completely debunk what you're saying, that these are not Jews. It's just not true. So the theory is they're going to do this canal, and the numbers don't work. The canal will cost $100 billion to build. It will take years. When it was talked about back in the 60s, 60 years ago this year, Livermore Laboratory talked about it, and they said, well, we'll detonate 500 nuclear bombs to help build a sea level canal, so you don't have locks that ships have to go through, like on the Suez. You don't have locks. It's sea level to sea level. So it's an easy thing. You don't have to go up. It's flat. But 500, so they're going to detonate 500 nuclear bombs in 2023 to build this thing. Now, do you think that might get a little bit of opposition from not just the environmentalists, like from everybody on the planet? Nobody's going to tolerate that. $100 billion, time to build it. So they say, so I heard Mike Adams say, well, that controls, that a lot of the world trade goes through the Suez Canal, and they want to take away some of that trade and get the money from it. Okay, well, what are the numbers, Mike? Analyze it. Even global elites have calculators. Okay? I mean, if they're all about money, they're going to sort of look at the investment. So $100 billion and time. How much revenue did Egypt earn last year? And look, the Suez Canal is a problem because it's narrow in parts, and we saw what happened. It got shut down for a week, and it disrupted global trade. That's a problem. So how much revenue did Egypt get from 12% of the world trade going through the Suez Canal? $9 billion. So you're going to divide that in half on a $100 million investment. That's not a very good return. I'm sorry. The numbers don't work. And they talked about building railways instead, all the way up Saudi Arabia, Jordan, across the Jordan Valley to Haifa. That's also been proposed. And there's some of those railways have already been constructed. So this nonsense that it's going to be this canal, this is the map. And you can see these are the maps available online. And it's, look how many nuclear bombs are going to have to set off to get through those mountain ranges, even if they go through the valley part. Now, the other thing that they're saying is, well, Israel wants to do this because Gaza has, I heard him say it, Health Ranger. And listen, on certain things, I agree with this guy 100%, okay? But that's not the issue. The issue is he losing his mind on this issue? I personally think he is. Well, they've got trillions of dollars of gas off of Gaza and oil, and Israel's trying to steal it. Okay. So I dug up the report, and in 2000, and here's a this is an RT report. I guess I don't have the video embedded. So they did, RT did that. Well, what's RT? Russia Today. Okay, who is like one of the masters of propaganda in the world? Russia. What's one of their main propaganda channels? RT. So they try to cause chaos. They're trying to they don't want the U.S. to have a foothold in the Middle East, so they're going to go against Israel, and they think they can manage all this. So Gaza is rich, gas rich, it says. So I looked it up. Now, maybe this will play it. Now, for some reason, it's not playing. So I looked it up. Back in 2000, British Gas and its partners, there's big PDF reports on this you can download, discovered a gas field 36 kilometers west of Gaza City, down here, And a couple fields, Marine 1 and 2, you can see them in the gray area. It's questionable. Mari B is within Israel territorial waters, unless you get lunatics like Amos Hochstein from our State Department, who was, oh, well, that's Gazan, like he did with the Lebanese one recently. That Yair Lapid signed on to, by the way. Billions of dollars worth there. So down here, so they said, we have this. The company drilled 2 wells there in 2000 and estimated potential gas reserves at around 1.4 trillion cubic feet. And so a guy like Mike Adams reads this and says, that's trillions of dollars. I mean, he's ranting about this. How much revenue in today's market, I'm sure the health ranger would tell me how to deal with my cough. I'm sure he'd have something I could buy from him to do that. He says, oh, by the way, he says, this Israel, there's nothing in Bible prophecy about this. Okay. You're welcome to believe that. I'm not surprised, given the way you're ranting about this. How much gas would you get from, say, 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in today's market? How much revenue? Oh, let's do 1.4 billion. 1.4 trillion cubic feet. How much revenue? $4.5 billion. All these reports, RT, Health Ranger, all these other people, it's trillions of dollars. No, it's not. Do the math. Now, if I'm wrong, please show me. But the only thing I've been able to find in all the research I did was 1.4 trillion proven gas reserves. And how much is, well, that's a lot of gas. That's enough to supply Gaza with gas for how many years do you think? 15 years. What Israel's found up here in Leviathan and some of the other fields, that's enough gas for Israel for 500 or 600 years. And by the way, I hear people saying those are the largest gas fields on the planet. They're not. They're big. Russia, so Israel might have 45 trillion cubic feet that they've been able to discover. And that's enough to supply Europe for a number of years, because that they need in the billions of cubic feet. Or it's hard because of the thermal units and all the conversion. I've spent hours and hours trying to figure this out, but Israel does not have the largest. They maybe have 45 trillion cubic feet. Who has the largest gas reserves on the planet? Russia. How much do they have? Just under 1,700 trillion cubic feet. So if you look at 1.4 trillion and 1,700 trillion, you're talking way over 1,000 times more gas that Russia has than Gaza. So it's important to Gaza, but it's literally a drop in the bucket, based on my understanding. And again, you're free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I just see people ranting about this. And here, this is from Al Monitor back in 2017. Same information. Amid reconciliation, Palestine sets its size on Gaza gas field. Same numbers, 1.4 trillion cubic feet that I was using. And you see here, 1.4 trillion cubic feet to cover the gas needs for 15 years in the West Bank and Gaza Strip based on current consumption rates. Significant, but not the war in Gaza is going to cost at least, my guess, I saw 50 billion. It's going to be at least double that when you look at the economic cost. It's $100 billion to get $5 billion worth of gas. As I said, even global elites have calculators and accountants. I just don't think it makes sense. Now, the other thing that you're going to see is you see all of this propaganda. So here's a picture, and what it says here, the evidence is also here. What could Hamas possibly have used to leave cars of the attendees to the rave in such conditions of destruction? So the allegation is these are the cars of the people that were at the rave. Now, I'm going to tell you there were like 850 people there, and it seems like there are a lot more cars than would be needed to do that, particularly since some came by buses. And what this is it's not the rave parking lot. It's a junkyard where they've taken all the cars that were destroyed by Hamas and shot up by Hamas in the attacks. You see how they have them all there? It's not, it's fake. It's a lie. This was discovered, by the way, at the University of Illinois, Chicago in 2014 or 2017. This is what's problem with this is like 6 or 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Ending white privilege starts with ending what? Jewish privilege. Here's a scene from some of the things going on the streets of London. They're attacking Jews. By the way, I mentioned they have these posters of wanted people and they go rip them down. I saw a picture in the Times of London of the posters of the hostages being ripped down in London by London police. So Home Secretary Braverman, sort of like our Attorney General, she complained about it. She wrote an op-ed in the Times of London. She seems to be a solid conservative lady. Fired by Sunak, the Prime Minister. But this is happening all over the world, this type of thing. This is one of the things that happened was that journalists based in Gaza were hired by CNN and other news organizations to embed with Hamas as they did their terrorist attacks. And of course, they come back and they say, well, I didn't know, I was a good guy. So here's one of them being kissed on the cheek by the head of Hamas, the military commander of Hamas in Gaza. And down below, here he is on the day of October 7th. And of course, here's another picture from one of his social media accounts in the lower right-hand corner. Well, he's just a journalist. And CNN still hasn't given a very good answer. Here's another article. What's Iran doing with these missiles? Here's another propaganda thing about, you see how they use the imagery? This is from Ayatollah Khamenei's webpage, Al-Aqsa Flood, a Palestinian epic. Today, the Palestinians are awake. The skillful Palestinian designers are at work. The action was carried out by the Palestinians themselves. You see how there's propaganda? They didn't do this all themselves. They had funding, they had money, came from Qatar, came from Iran, came from elsewhere, came from tax receipts that Israel gave to them. God willing, this epic will be a big step towards the salvation of Palestine. Glenn Beck the other day did a video about Agents of Chaos. That's where I got the title from. This is a report from our State Department back in August 2020, Pillars of Russia's Disinformation and Propaganda Ecosystem. And they have some of the websites, geopolitica.ru, Southfront, which has some good maps. I look at them a lot. And you just need to know that some of these are global research. So these are kind of propaganda channels that are used. And you've probably seen this one. I believe that picture originated of Microsoft founder Bill Gates from geopolitica.ru. But look at what they have in here. They're kind of interesting. This was from Geopolitical.ru. This is from a 2020 report. Also claims to promote a multipolar world while rejecting liberalism, communism, and fascism. The website proclaimed objection to fascism is disingenuous, considering Dugin's reported praise for the projects of the Nazi paramilitary organization, the SS, and its pseudo-research institute, the whatever that German word is. Dugin said this: the concept of the multipolar world championed by Geopolitical.ru translates into a Dugin envisioned world where Russia dominates its neighbors, divides Georgia, annexes Ukraine, Finland, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece, and gives away Azerbaijan to Iran. Also in foreign policy, back in 2016, the unlikely origins of Russia's manifest destiny. It also talks about Dugin and his influence. And here it talked about Russia lost control of the Soviet Union. It preached that the country's humiliation was the result of foreign conspiracies. The dust jacket was emblazoned it's about Dugin's book, by the way, was emblazoned with the swastika-like runic symbol known in the occult circles as the Star of Chaos. And you see this on T-shirts around Russia and military and that type of thing. If the parallels with the Third Reich were not already plentiful enough, it called for the formation of a geopolitical axis which would include Germany and Japan. That was Dugin's book. And a lot of this built on themes that Zbigniew Brzezinski, a big technocracy guy from Colombia, national security advisor under Jimmy Carter, he wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard, American Primacy and Its Geostrategic Imperatives, and he talked a lot about these things and how we need to kind of keep the world at odds to be able to control things. And I think, by the way, I think that picture on the right captures the essence of Dr. Brzezinski so very, very well. And if I was snarky, I would say, hey, Morning Joe, some morning, the Lord tarries, 10, 20 years from now, you're going to roll over in bed, open your eyes in the morning, and you're going to see the female version of that. But that would be snarky to say that, so I won't do that. So Israel's dividing the Gaza Strip, Wadi Gaza, so there's sort of north, south, and middle. They're going to go to the south. I don't know how long this will take. This is from Sky News. This was also reported this morning. Deal near on a 5-day pause in fighting. WHO calls Al-Shifa a death zone. And then there's also the front opening up on the north in the mountains of southern Lebanon. This was an encouragement this year. This was a pro-Israel rally in D.C. on the mall between the Washington Monument and the state capitol. And then here's the view looking the other direction. The largest pro-Israel rally in the history of the United States. Another thing that happened this week, TikTok, Osama bin Laden's letter that he wrote went viral on TikTok. And all these young people were reading it. Oh, Osama bin Laden really understood what was going on. He was so wise about how bad the U.S. is. And then they were posting like, I've been reading the Quran, and I think Quran is the feminist, pro-woman book. All these young people, it was all over TikTok. And it seemed, the release of it seemed to coincide with the appearance of the guy who really controls TikTok in San Francisco this week. It was kind of interesting. This is a good article by Yoram Ettinger. You can get that at JNS, Iran's Jihad Against the West. And then we see this, and I'll talk more about this tonight. The Biden administration renews a sanction waiver that helps fund terrorism. Remember when it was $6 billion, now it's $10 billion. They got the $6 billion back, so we've replaced it with more. And by the way, with all the chaos going on in the world, that's not getting much press. And again, I'll talk more about this tonight on Hope for Our Times, Caroline Glick's article, What Did the Palestinians Want? And we'll talk about that with some graphics and that type of things. But look at this. Look, this is a survey that was done. How do you view the U.S.? Very negative. This is Palestinian people in the West Bank. U.S. very negative, 98%. That's not good. Iran, well, somewhat negative, very negative, half, but a lot of positive thoughts. Israel, numbers are like 70, 80% negative. And that's not good because there's a lot of disruption. I showed you the picture there of the West Bank. And I will also discuss this tonight if I have time. I think I have 45 minutes, which I think I may have exceeded already. But Blinken lays out possible endgame in Gaza under Palestinian Authority. And Mark Levin has this phenomenal takedown, the diabolical Blinken plan exposed. And he goes through in excruciating detail, and I will discuss some of that tonight, how this is going to happen. He cites articles like from The Tablet, this Iranian spy ring that's been unearthed by The Atlantic and Semaphore, which is tied in with I don't know if it's Al Monitor. It's one of the sort of Middle East news services. And a great article by Michael Duran and Tony Badrin from May of 2021, the realignment that the Biden administration is doing. And it's amazing. And then we'll also discuss a little bit about what is Israel's options after they win in Gaza. I'll give you, there's 4 or 5 options, and only one of them appears to be achievable, and it's not very good. It's really, what do you do when you're faced with this? What do you do with an enemy that's relentless like this? So it's not, you got to think about it not as genocide, it's eliminating the enemy. That's what's going on. And it is a true enemy. I don't care what other people say. So a lot of things to talk about, a lot of anti-Semitism out there. It's shocking to watch this come about. So, hope for our time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific tonight, and for a little bit, and we'll include some of this and maybe some other things, depending how much time I have. But we have a biblical thing that gives, I think, great hope on biblical perspective that I will bring into it for sure. So anyway, thanks for listening, and let's pray. Lord, give us strength and courage to live and stand firm in these times. Give us opportunities to share the gospel. Give us renewed hope to wait the coming King, when all this is going to be cleaned up. Bless us this week in Jesus' name. Amen.